This is a very special collection of retro gaming we're going to go and visit today. Hello Cave Dwellers, yes, it's time for a retro road trip where we have the privilege of being shown a private museum located in West Sussex. Everyone get in the car and strap in, stop kicking me in the back of the seat, and let's go on a retro road trip.
My name's David Andrews. I've been using consoles and various computers since sort of 70s, starting with something like a grandstand console, very, very old one with the paddles and the little sports games on it. My parents probably saw that I had a natural sort of fascination with that. I think they just sort of saw that, I really took to this and just enjoyed playing it and enjoyed how it worked. And that led on to the Spectrum 48K Plus, so not the original rubber key, but the plastic key version. Had that for quite a long time. Bought various games, obviously, for that from the newsagents and various game shops. But also did more programming, did a lot of copying code out of your Sinclair and Sinclair user, writing various programs and the hacks and everything for games. And that was a long time, I think, before I then moved on to the 16-bit era. I think at that point it wasn't a collection because pretty much every system replaced the last. Actual collecting consciously probably started around the mid to late 90s. So quite late on in terms of where the machines had got to. And then I think probably over the next 10 years was where the bulk of my collection came about. I mean, my collection grew very quickly in the first few years. I think I had a reasonable amount of disposable income at the time. I was probably in my first proper sort of long-term job and didn't have a huge amount of outlays. So I was using it to build that collection. And I'm a little bit of a collector of collections. If there's something that has a finite number or something, I will try to get the whole lot. And because I enjoyed consoles so much and I was collecting and getting back some of those memories from having the Master System and having the PC Engine originally, it was just an opportunity for me to see what was out there and actually be able to buy it and play them.
We'd like to thank PCBWay.com for supporting our episode today. They aren't just about PCBs, although they do a tremendous job of that. They also offer CNC machining, sheet metal fabrication, 3D printing and injection moulding. If you're creating, then PCBWay.com can help you bring your project to life. Get an instant quote now over at PCBWay.com, and we thank them for their support.
So the Sega cabinet goes back to the very first Sega console, the SG-1000. Only slightly unfortunate when I bought that. I probably wasn't as strict as I am now when I buy consoles, so that's one of the few where I don't actually have the box. And as you can see, one of the slats in the cartridge port is missing. But yeah, it was just nice to have the original one, and just because that's the one that I probably have the most passion for on the Sega side of things. That's the one where I really got into console gaming and let's say again, the Japanese side of it. Then moving on to the updated SG-1002, sort of bears similar design to the Mark III and to the Master System, but an upgrade from the Mark I. Onto the Sega Mark III, reasonable collection of games for that one. There's about 86 games for the Mark III, and then towards the end of its life it sort of migrated into the Master System. That's a UK Master System in my collection. Same for the Japanese one, except that you have the narrower cartridge slot. The cartridges are a different ratio. Master System 2, I think I bought that a lot later in time. I never actually had a Master System 2 originally. I had the Master System, but not the Mark II. Not a design that I'm particularly a favourite of. I do love the Master System. I think the design of that was great. So the Mega Drive was probably the first Japanese console I got. So we have two in the collection. We've got an Asian PAL and an NTSC version. Also on that Japanese Mega Drive, we've got the Super 32X. As far as I'm aware, identical to the Genesis 32X that's below it and the UK 32X, which I don't have. So the Mega Jet is a little handheld unit that you can slot original Japanese Mega Drive games into the top of. It was mostly used by Japanese airlines to allow people to play Mega Drive games on their little screen on their flight. Not too easy to find now. It's a nice little unit, has some AV ports on the back of it. There's another version with a slightly different Japan Airlines branding on it, which I've not actually seen for sale anywhere, but would obviously be a lovely addition if I could find one. But it is one that obviously had to be in the collection. So the Multi-Mega is, or was supposed to be, a portable Mega Drive and Mega CD, and obviously played CD audio as well, known as the CDX in America. Not difficult to find, but very, very expensive. Like most of my machines, that's boxed, manuals, cables, everything to go with it. So it's a nice unit. It's not easy to find, but they're out there. So this cabinet continues the Sega collection. We'll start with the Japanese V-Saturn, which was made by JVC, known as the V-Saturn. Pretty much identical to the Saturn as far as I'm aware, just a branding exercise. One that I would love to put next to that would be the High Saturn, but again, nowadays difficult to find, very expensive. But the High Saturn is a jet black Saturn with a gold Hitachi logo in the middle. There's also a High Saturn karaoke set, which bizarrely you can find a lot easier than you can the console. Next to that is the Sega Wonder Mega, Japanese combination of Mega Drive, Mega CD, and your favourite, karaoke. Below that we have three Sega Saturns. The first one we have on the left is the original Japanese Sega Saturn. In the middle is the standard UK Saturn with a different logo. And on the right hand side we have a Japanese, what they call skeleton. This is called translucent Sega Saturn, which is my favourite in that row. It's limited. I couldn't tell you how many there were. Probably find out. I think it was limited, but maybe limited to how many people bought it.
Sure.
Below that we have three Sega Dreamcasts. On the left we've got a limited edition Hello Kitty Dreamcast from Japan. Came with branded pink translucent VMU, keyboard, and a whole stack of games and discs. In the middle we have the standard UK Dreamcast, and on the right hand side we have another Japanese Dreamcast, the Regulation 7 branding. At the top, we have another couple of Sega items, not strictly consoles, but we've got the Mini Astro City, or the Astro City Mini, both versions. We have on the left the horizontal screen and on the right the vertical screen. To the right of that, the Taito Egret Mini 2 with the rotating screen, which is lovely feature on that one. And then we have a little Neo Geo Pocket, or sort of Neo Geo Home Arcade.
It was looking at this shelf of modern retro devices that reminded David he had another new thing to show me, and this one breaks his golden rule of never collecting anything with a keyboard. It is the new X68000Z, a mini Sharp X68000, which isn't available in the UK and likely never will be without importing it especially. What surprised me about this mini was the incredibly high build quality. The keyboard and mouse especially felt phenomenal, as did the overall experience of using it. Now I'm lucky enough to have an X68000, but so many more people deserve to enjoy the experience of this system, and this really is a nice way of doing it. Notice that this Mini is grey. That's because it's an early access version of the package. The regular ones will come in black. If there's one thing I've learned from my visit today, it's that David can't resist a special edition console, and this is no exception.
In addition to the traditional TV plug consoles, I've also got a large collection of portable machines and handhelds. Got a cabinet pretty much dedicated to them, mostly top view shelves Nintendo, starting with the original Game Boy, which is actually the original one that I owned at the time. So again, all the original boxes and everything for that. So I think originally with the original Game Boy, like a lot of people, Tetris was my favourite. Tetris was what took most of my time. Next to that, we have a Game Boy Light, which was only available in Japan, and gave me the addition of a backlight, which also reduced the batteries. We have a couple of Game Boy Micros, which came along and then very, very quickly disappeared. We've got a standard silver one and also a limited edition Mario Anniversary Edition in the colours of the original Famicom. Standard Game Boy Advance SP, and then next to that the original Game Boy Advance. And we have a 3DS XL Super Nintendo branded version. Underneath that shelf, we move away from Nintendo. In the middle, we've got the Nokia N-Gage. Obviously, Nokia at the time famous for just doing phones. It is a telephone. You do put a SIM card in it or whatever network you're on, but it also takes SD card games. It's got a slight annoying thing on it where in order to change the game, you have to remove the back panel, you have to remove the battery, then you can get access to the game and put it all back together again afterwards. I never used it as a phone. I would have had a business phone at the time anyway, so I also don't think it really lends itself to using as a phone. It's not a great shape to use as a phone. It looks a bit weird. To the left of that, we've got some Neo Geo Pockets, Neo Geo Pocket colours, variety of styles, and also a variety of there's a Japanese, couple of them Japanese, couple of them are UK. So there's, I think there's 3 colours and 1 black and white one there. Gizmondo. One that got a lot of press when it came out, comes in a very Apple-esque style matte black finished box with silver embossing on it, and again the console itself has kind of got a velvety feel to the black elements of it. Again, another one though that I never really did an awful lot with. It was there for the collection, but it's a really nice one to have, and I do like having it in the collection. And to the right hand side we have the 3 Bandai WonderSwans, the WonderSwan, the original black and white, the blue WonderSwan colour, and the Swan Crystal. Another one that I'm trying to build up a little bit more of a collection on games, because that's a nice one to collect games for. Below that we have some more Sega units. Back left we've got the Genesis Nomad, the handheld Sega Genesis. It is what it is really. It's you just slot your Genesis cartridges in, takes about 30 batteries. And doesn't last very long, but it's a handheld console that at the time was your only way really to play Genesis quality games on the move. In front of that is a Sega Kids Gear, a little bit of an oddity. It's a variation on the Game Gear. It comes with Virtua Fighter Kids. Yeah, a little bit of a strange console, not really sure who that was aimed at. In front of that we've got a limited edition Sega Game Gear, Japanese Game Gear, which is called a GG White. It comes in a nice big plastic carry case. Originally it comes with the TV tuner. That one's actually been bought retrospectively, which is why it's a slightly different colour. It's slightly yellowed. And to the right of that, again with the TV tuner, we've got the standard UK Game Gear. And then behind that, the 4 variations on the Game Gear Micro. Each of those Game Gear Micros has 4 different games built into it. They came out as part of the Sega 60th anniversary. Yeah, so we have a rack dedicated, or a cabinet rather, dedicated to Nintendo, it's all in chronological order pretty much, starting with the original Japanese Famicom with the old gold and red design, and then underneath that the disk drive. Next to that is a redesigned Famicom known as the Famicom AV, which has a different selection of AV ports to the original Famicom just to give a slightly better output. Next to that is the original UK Nintendo Entertainment System. As I mentioned before, I'm a bit of a Sega fan, so I didn't have one at the same time as the Master System. It was one that I picked up later. Next shelf down, we have the Japanese Super Famicom. Again, and probably along with the Mega Drive, the Japanese Mega Drive, my Japanese Super Famicom was the one that I lusted after the most, and remember going to a store in London where they had them on display and actually playing on the Japanese ones, playing Final Fight, playing Super Mario World, trying to convince parents to buy me one. And then next to that, obviously the redesigned Super Nintendo from America. I don't like to mod consoles. I kind of feel it takes away from what they are if they start to do things that they shouldn't do. So no, generally everything you see here is factory, is as it was. So underneath the Super Nintendos, we've then got the Japanese Super Famicom Mini, and alongside that the American equivalent, so the Super Nintendo Mini is in the same style as the Japanese Mini but the same colour scheme as their original Super Nintendo, and they didn't go all bricky on that one. Next to that is the infamous Virtual Boy. That's actually an American version. I keep toying with picking up a Japanese one as well, but again, expensive to just get a duplicate. I haven't played it a lot. I didn't like it a huge amount when I did. Obviously it's a little bit fiddly because you don't wear it as such. You kind of set it up in front of you and then just push your face into it. So yeah, I don't think I played it enough to get particularly nauseous. I actually got that and a lot of games in America on a holiday in the early 90s, and they were selling the Virtual Boy very, very cheap, and I think I got a load of games for about $3 each or something. So yeah, I kind of got that and managed to get it in the suitcase and get it back. So then we've got there's a Japanese N64, and underneath that the 64DD or 64 disk drive. I need to look up how many games there were, but there was literally a handful of games, sort of less than a couple of dozen games for that. I have about 6 or 7 of them, and 2 that I know around that you can buy are just way out of my price range, in the thousands of pounds. The 64DD games, top of my list was probably the F-Zero X expansion disc. It allows you to create your own tracks in F-Zero. It works in combination with having the F-Zero X cartridge in the N64 at the same time. SimCity 64 DD, obviously the classic SimCity, pretty much as you can expect it on a console, a little bit clunky with a controller, but it's there and it works. Doshin the Giant, I couldn't tell you much about. It's a bit of a Japanese one, that one. I'm not too sure on the history on that one. There's also a small series of Mario Artist games, which came with either a mouse or a microphone and allowed you to draw various pictures and record things. And then there's a modem card to go with it as well.
This was an opportunity that I just couldn't miss. The chance to try out an N64 disk drive firsthand. So we fired up SimCity and David handed me the controls. The discs themselves reminded me a little of zip disks in their construction. You may remember that the Super Nintendo had a version of SimCity just like so many other platforms, so the N64 had to do something extra to stand out. And of course it did that by being all 3D about it. So I can zoom in, I can rotate my view, but I can also go down to street level and I can take a first person perspective and walk around. I can walk up to my Sims and I can see what they're thinking about. The game itself is in Japanese, but the basics are easy to find. Blue for retail, yellow for industrial zones, power lines and such, although I saw no waterworks option. Perhaps that's missing, or perhaps it just eluded me in the menus. It was wonderful to be able to experience it though for the first time and to see what I missed out on.
So next to the 64 on the DD, we've got a limited edition, I believe it's a UK Pokemon N64. Again, like most of my machines, boxed with all of the manuals and everything to go with them. Again, not a huge Pokemon fan, but it was available at a decent price and it looks nice in the collection. Underneath that we have the Panasonic Q, the Nintendo GameCube and combined DVD drive, the lovely mirrored finish on the front of that, matching controller, again boxed. That's also the only one that's ever given me grief on an eBay purchase. I got stung big time on that one. I bought one, I think it was probably around the £600 mark, £600 or £700. Got led on, oh yeah, it's on its way, it's on its way. Oh yeah, we sent it to the wrong person. Oh, I'll throw in a few games. Eventually I gave up and managed to get my money back, fortunately, but that's the only one that really gave me the grief. And then obviously I went off and found somewhere else to get another one. And then on the bottom shelf, we have the original Nintendo Wii. To the right of that, the Wii Mini. Bit of a strange unit, that one. Almost like a cut down Wii. Don't think it sold very well, didn't really last very long. And into the right of that, the Wii U. Next cabinet on at the top, we have the Bandai Playdia. Again, a little bit of a strange console, CD-ROM based console. Detachable infrared remote control rather than a keyboard control. The game's a little bit similar to what you get for the Casio Loopy. Obviously the style of it gives you the idea that it's more of a toy, with the bright blue, the bright yellow, the plasticky kind of look to it, which I don't think makes it look bad, but it does maybe look a little bit like a toy than an expensive console. To the right, we've got the Casio Loopy, probably unique in the fact that it acts as a sticker printer. That one was really aimed at a female gaming market. Below that, we've got the two Panasonic versions of the 3DO, the original FZ1 and the FZ10. I remember reading about them in Edge Issue 1 because they had an interview with Trip Hawkins. And I remember reading about those. I think the cost of it was too high, and what I had at the time, it didn't interest me. It was only later that I knew about them, so it was later that I thought, oh yeah, it'd be nice to pick up a couple of 3DOs for the collection. But I never actually owned one or played one in the day. Below that, we have a variety of NEC consoles. So we have the original white PC Engine, its next successor, the Core Graphics, and then the Core Graphics 2. As far as I'm aware, pretty much the same console, except for a variety of different AV outputs and some additional, I think the Core Graphics 2 had some additional graphics power inside it, slightly modified internals, but nothing significant. And on the right-hand side, the PC Engine Shuttle, which I believe was aimed to try and sell the PC Engine to a younger audience. I had an original PC Engine when they came out. Again, it was around the time that I was getting into the Japanese import scene, getting the Mega Drive, Japanese Mega Drive, the Japanese Super Famicom. Was reading things like CMVG, seeing that infamous now picture of the PC Engine, the CD-ROM and the packet of skips, just to show it's the size. But still one of my all-time favourite consoles, I think, the PC Engine. Super Graphics, something a lot later. Never had that when it came out. A bit like the Neo Geo, it was a bit of a, if you've got the money, then you can afford it. Probably heavily underused. I think if I spent that much money and then I only got 5 games, that would be a little bit disappointing. I have 2 games for that. I think it's Battle Ace and obviously Ghouls and Ghosts. Did plug that in the other day. That works great, and it's got some good AV output on that one. Next to that is actually the European version of the TurboGrafx. Didn't realise it at the time, but it wasn't the TurboGrafx 16. It was the European one that I believe was just sold by Telegames. Would like to get a TurboGrafx 16 if I could, a proper US one, but again, difficult to find nowadays. Underneath that, PCFX, another slightly weird unit. Have a couple of games for that. Be completely honest, I've not actually used that one. And next to it, the Duo RX, which is the last of the combined PC Engine and PC Engine CD-ROM consoles. Before that, there was the Duo in black, and there was the Duo R. And obviously you can see I don't actually have, unfortunately, any of the PC Engine CD-ROM interfaces or CD-ROM add-ons yet.
With such a great hardware collection, there had to be software somewhere, and of course David has that too, a carefully curated collection of collections. Things like the Sega Ages collection for the PlayStation 2, comprising of remakes of classic games like Outrun, Golden Axe and Fantasy Zone. As well as special editions, t-shirts and collector's edition games, David spent decades visiting trade shows where he collected mountains of pamphlets and flyers, which he's carefully filed and has even been kind enough to donate some of them to the Cave and to the Arcade Archive. He has a special shelf dedicated to Space Harrier. His 32X collection spans Japanese, US and UK models, so you really need to get that UK hardware now, David, so you can play all of those. And I, like so many others, find Japanese Mega Drive games to be endearing in their artwork and designs. They have a less uniform feel to them than our UK box art, and I like them all the more for it. Looking further up the shelves, I found these Sega cards for the card slot that's on the Master System. That slot was removed on the Master System too, as cartridges had become the standard. Above these is a complete collection of Master System Gold Box games. The gold indicates first-party games by Sega in Japan, and there was a silver box range as well for third-party developers, and they look gorgeous. I even found some Amstrad representation in these shelves, and yes, David does have an Amstrad GX4000 tucked away in his collection. Could he even call himself a collector if he didn't? We could dedicate an entire episode to his games alone, but we've got more cabinets to explore.
Okay, down to two cabinets left. One here with primarily Atari and Microsoft. So at the top we have a 6-switch wooden front 2600, and into the right hand side of that the 4-switch 2100 with the black front. Not consoles I owned originally. Never had an Atari console, but it was high on the list when I started collecting because they are, the epitome of the first consoles that came out with their paddle controllers. And I was talking to somebody the other day about consoles, and the first thing they said to me was, "Do you have any Ataris?" Underneath that, we've got the 7800, which I may be wrong, but I think that was more aimed at the American market, the 7800, than the UK market. And then in the front, we've got a little mini Atari 2600 Junior with some of the original controllers and paddles. To the right of that, the Atari Jaguar with one of the worst controllers I think ever designed. They had the little snap-on covers that would go over them, which meant the buttons didn't actually work, and you couldn't really tell what to do anyway because there's about 12 buttons on that controller just in one small area. And then we move on to the Microsoft era, I guess. These now are all ones that I purchased when they came out. So these weren't ones that I had to retrospectively do. So all of these machines are now ones that I bought on the day they came, not on the day they came out necessarily, but were when they were current. So the original Xbox, wanted to keep these two together. So the original Xbox 360, obviously a lot of people's favourite Xbox console, I think. Underneath there, we've got the original Xbox One. That's a day one edition. And to the right of that, the Xbox One X, which is the Project Scorpio edition. And then on the bottom shelf, the Xbox One S Granite edition. So this cabinet is SNK and Sony. So we've got on the top shelf, we have the Neo Geo AES. Like 95% of the population never afforded one in the time. It wasn't so much a console, but if you tell your parents that the games are kind of £300 each, you're not going to get many games. It was all very, very much premium and well out of most people's reach, but a very nice console. To the right of that, we have one of the two Neo Geo CDs, the top-loading CD and the front-loading drawer-based CD, and then the newer, more sort of streamlined, slim version, if you would, the CD-Z. And in front of that, we have the Neo Geo X, which was a third-party, but I believe officially licensed Neo Geo product with SNK. And then finally, we have my Sony collection. Original Sony PlayStation 1, that is the original one that I bought when they came out. Obviously had a massive impact on the industry. To the right of that, the PS1 small portable version. I don't have the LCD screen that goes with that, but there's a nice little LCD screen add-on that you can get for that. We have the original PS2 along with a Japanese ceramic white PS2, which was a Gran Turismo bundle. Underneath that, we have the original fat Sony PlayStation 3 with the Spider-Man font. That's the original design on the bottom shelf of the PS4 Pro, and then the more modern PS4 Pro with a nice gap in the middle for me to maybe get a redesigned PS4 and slot that in there at some point as well.
At this point on our trip, I needed to think about driving home, but I'd had so much fun exploring David's collection, and I love that he's an avid current-gen gamer too, retiring his battle-scarred consoles to his museum when the next one comes along, and revisiting it when nostalgia, or a visitor like me, comes knocking. I asked David what his plans are for the future of his collection.
The collecting is slowing down, not because I don't want to buy them. There are plenty of machines out there that I would like to get, but it is largely now governed by the sheer fascination and the number of people collecting and the prices. There's a lot of machines where I would like to fill holes in my collection with the games, particularly something like the SG-1000, the Lynx, the Jaguar. Collections, particularly where there's a very small number of games. Jaguar would be a good example because there's only so many, and it would be easy to collect all of them. But the rare ones, they're just too expensive. You just can't afford those. And the same with the consoles. There's a lot of consoles I would like to get, but if you do find them, they're harder to find because there's less of them. They're far more expensive because of the demand.
And with that, it was time to leave. So huge thanks to David for hosting us today and for showing us his collection. If you have a special collection, a museum, an arcade, or anything else you fancy inviting me along to for a retro road trip, then please let me know. And if you'd like to make your own retro road trip to the cave, then you know where to go. It's retrocollective.co.uk. Until next time, thanks for watching and take care.